VR is the future. It is the future of everything, not just gaming, social interaction, education, work, but much, much more. This technology isn't just a gimmick, since it's a new method of content consumption. Not only does it transform our entertainment systems, but the way we function as a society as a whole. The type of VR we have today is only a small fraction compared to the grand potential it can ultimately achieve. Our current concepts of virtual reality are relatively rudimentary. We strap lopsided headsets to our face, attach unintuitive hand controllers, and use an extremely small space to move around in the vast worlds that are presented to us. And yet, given all these limitations, I'm still addicted to it. The feeling of presence is unlike any form of media we have available today. Games such as Echo Arena, Half-Life Alyx, and The Room and Dark Matter provide extraordinary landscapes that are so lifelike that they boggle the mind, making it difficult to differentiate what is real from what is artificial. VR has yet to hit mainstream appeal, despite the rapidly growing catalog of technological advances, from high-resolution 100-inch OLED television screens to powerful gaming consoles, which have become must-buy devices. Virtual reality headsets are still a niche product, despite offering experiences far beyond what flat-screen devices can provide. So, what is the future of VR, and how can it ever hope to compete with the mass appeal of 2D devices? First of all, people will need to stop living in ignorance when it comes to VR. Their perception of it will have to change, since for many consumers, their initial experience of VR was tethered to a makeshift cardboard display encased around a smartphone. Although Google Cardboard iterations are impressive at first, they don't offer a fully immersive or compelling 360 cinema feeling. Real VR requires a first-hand experience with a high-end headset, such as the new Oculus Quest 2, to fully grasp its panoramic capabilities. When people are eventually able to try out headsets safely, and when the technology gets more consumer-friendly with better specs and cheaper price points, people will buy it. Again, that's all it takes to create a new global phenomenon. VR is an inevitability, though it'll take time. But shouldn't the VR transformed our society by now, given its power? Are we actually at a point where VR is ready to be consumed internationally on a mainstream scale? Yes, it takes a far better, revolutionary product to become fully aware of how bad the product before it was. For me, that transformation happened with the Oculus Quest 2, which is arguably the true dawn of all things virtual. This $299 headset delivers a full VR experience and then some at a record price. This should be VR's tipping point. This should start a revolution with VR. Yet it will be a slow progression, if a progression at all. Why? The reasons are manifold. From privacy concerns, to price points, to ease of use, to motion sickness complaints, there are a million reasons why not to jump on this headset. But despite these concerns, Quest 2 is still a killer VR product and speaks to the future of how virtual reality will evolve. It is a milestone in the virtual reality landscape and deserves to be treated as one. We are now on the threshold of being able to transport ourselves to any ideal location at any time. So how exactly will VR impact our society? Now, the best way to understand this is to look at the evolution of hardware and software mechanics over the past 4 to 10 years. Back in 2016, for instance, when the first consumer VR products became available, the headset of choice was either the Oculus Rift or the HTC Vive. The PSVR came out around the end of the year, making an affordable alternative for PlayStation 4 owners. However, if we compare these headsets to what we have today, they are technological relics and not user-friendly in the slightest. For example, the Oculus Rift retailed at $599 without touch controllers, and one needed a large enough room to set up the surrounding visual sensors. The HTC Vive cost $800, but included hand controls that were somewhat bulky and awkward to use. Both of these headsets necessitated a very powerful gaming computer to which they were attached at all times. Such computers often cost upwards of $1,500 for the full experience. The PSVR, though cheaper at $400, suffered from less than optimum resolution and field of view and required the latest iteration of the PlayStation console. Today, the Oculus Quest 2 is completely a standalone device, which is not tethered to a computer and doesn't use separate visual sensors. It comes with better hand controllers, replete with state-of-the-art haptics, and yet is $500 cheaper than the original HTC Vive. The resolution in particular has been vastly improved. For instance, the Rift had a resolution of 1080 by 1200 per eye compared to the staggering resolution of the Quest 2 at 1832 by 1920 per eye, roughly. Keep in mind, such specs are in a non-tethered headset that has the new stellar XR2 chip built in, which is capable of a 90 Hz refresh rate and has tracking built into the system. In terms of PC VR, the HP Reverb G2 has a resolution of 2160 by 2160, great audio, and only a $600 price tag, which is pretty low all things considered. These two products are tackling VR's biggest weaknesses and are doing so at an almost exponential rate. In just 4 years, we've gotten close to doubling the resolution, cutting the price point in more than half, and delivering some awesome games and experiences. All of this without having to buy a high-end computer system. Now, if we lay out a conservative timeline based upon the data from 2016 to 2020, we should be able to get a good sense of the future of VR. My first thought is how the emergence and growth of standalone headsets is shaping the industry. Freedom from a computer or a console is elemental to VR's success. Back in 2018, when Oculus released the Go, an all-in-one VR device with only 3 degrees of freedom, it was actually very impressive. Then a year later, we got the Oculus Quest, a true evolution of the Go's technology, this time offering a full 6 degrees of freedom, and just 18 months later, we got the Quest 2. To be sure, the Quest 2 makes the best case for why non-tethered VR is the future of virtual reality. This level of growth in 2 years is astonishing and quite unexpected, to be honest. Early prognosticators thought it wouldn't be until 2025 when standalone VR would be readily available, dramatically increase the user base, and there's no doubt that VR is the future. If we keep improving VR hardware and software as we have in these past few years, then we are going to witness a radical shift in how we interact with informational technologies. Work and school in particular will be transformed in the best way imaginable. No longer will we be locked in with antiquated forms of learning. Imagine that instead of communicating to your classmates and coworkers from small, silhouetted boxes on a computer, you strap on a headset and you will be fully there in avataric form. You will become aware of their presence in a full 3D space and can interact with them as if it were real life. The use of real-life avatars that look like any character you can imagine, including your own face, emphasizes this to a surreal degree. You can even share your work in a streamlined setup. That dream is already here, albeit even if it's still in a rudimentary form. Enter Spatial. Spatial is not just a new work app, it is a crystal ball into the future. This app uses your phone or any device with a camera to create a real-life avatar of yourself. When you invite others to your play space who all have virtual versions of themselves, it creates a mesmerizing effect, one of vibrant presence. That feeling of being able to work as if you were all there in person is transformative. The app even has different environments, streamlined features, and the ability to conference in other people that don't even have a VR headset. It truly speaks of the expandable capabilities of VR as a tool and why the sense of interactive presence is key. The ways this tool can be expanded upon are endless and will ultimately change the way we work. Now imagine you strap on your headset and enter a virtual school. You teleport over to your classroom, get a perfect seat in the center, and view your classmates around you. As you open up your school menu to pull open a science textbook, your teacher begins to speak to your class. She discusses how red blood cells travel throughout your body, turning the virtual book to page 86, and initiates a powerful, responsive haptic feedback, and when you finally land on the correct page, it makes the world turn black. All that's left is you and the book. Then the book morphs directly before your eyes into one singular, triumphant page, and that page floats towards you until it covers your entire vision. Suddenly, you enter the page. You're inside the human body, navigating through it as if it were a ride. Along the way, you receive detailed information generated in real time regarding human blood cells. You become a congealed molecular cluster and travel inside various arteries, experiencing what had hitherto only been imaginary. This is the future of education, and it is available now. Online education should be an enhancement of in-person learning, and VR is the only way to truly realize those capabilities. Looking at a flat screen hour after hour is tedious and boring, as all students know who have suffered during the great 2020 pandemic. Virtual reality learning has so many benefits to it over current online learning and even in-person learning to an extent that being willfully ignorant to it simply doesn't make much sense. Trying to suppress this new way of education and chalking it up to the fact that it isn't ready or is far too expensive is nonsensical. For example, my school offers each student a $250 Chromebook that they may use throughout the school year. Now imagine that instead they gave us each a $299 Oculus Quest 2. Even disregarding the use of VR as a replacement to Zoom lectures, having students explore the depths of Egypt in order to uncover the truth behind a murder in the room of dark matter, or enter the ring in the thrill of a fight, is more than worth the price of admission in my opinion. These two games I mentioned in particular are perfect for social studies and PE. The former offers hours of elaborate puzzles relating to Egyptian mythology that requires more brain power and focus than any typical Scantron quiz. Thrill of the Fight is an exhausting fighting game that has been played by professionals all around the world. It also tracks your progress and gives you real-time feedback and is correlated to your very own skill level. Zoom has been more or less a disaster for students since it lacks full immersion. However, with VR, one can actually see and hear other students in varying environments and have a plethora of options in which to truly interact with them as well as with your particular teacher or professor. Being able to join others around the world in real time and explore different adventures is why many choose to buy a virtual reality headset in the first place. Apps like Big Screen, VR Chat, Rec Room, Facebook Horizon, AltSpace, and many more push these boundaries. They allow participants to explore and also create their very own virtual interactive environments. Now, the best social VR apps don't just allow people across the world to meet up, but provide customizable avatars, multiplayer games, and various scenery in order to keep users engaged. That's why we've seen such a rise with games like VR Chat and Big Screen, and why we'll continue to see many more social games, not social apps. Being social and playing games go hand in hand, and that is even more obvious in VR. The key to VR development, ironically, is how other technologies advance beforehand. For example, even phones have a large impact on the lenses found in headsets. According to Oculus engineers, if Apple would push higher and higher resolutions within their smartphones, then we would already be looking at 4K resolutions per eye in almost all main VR headsets, since the price point for such would be made much cheaper and more widely available. Better mobile chips also permit for better AI, graphics, resolution, and performance in all standalone VR. Whether this will continue to improve in the years to come is yet to be seen, but my suspicion is that it will. Currently, major improvements of virtual reality headsets are heavily reliant on advances in other spaces of entertainment. Eventually, however, VR will become a self-sustaining industry where the growth is based almost entirely within the medium itself. Once that point is reached, the development of compelling software and games will surge. Not only will full-fledged AAA games based on world-renowned IPs become more standard, but it will be considered as a financially viable platform for the development of all such games. Currently, unless you receive backing from another source, small indie-based developers are forced in many cases to sacrifice their creative vision due to the relatively small user base in VR and the lack of a financial return. All of that will change when VR becomes more widely adopted. Currently, the most successful game in VR is a gimmicky, arcade-like fitness rhythm game called Beat Saber. The reason? Well, present-day developers are incapable of transforming popular genres into a real-life format which utilizes the true potential of VR. Essentially, the novelty of VR means that developers are only barely understanding how to make a great game on it. Traditionally, games are developed with a certain level of tropes and consumer expectations. With VR, all those preconceived ideas need to be revolutionized. With VR, you aren't building a game or another application, but you are constructing a parallel reality, worlds upon worlds that will not be played, but lived and experienced. The tropes that are necessary for flat-screen video games are actually to the detriment of VR, and once the devices have a higher user base, new design philosophies will form and then VR will break through these chains. So the reason why Beat Saber is unusually popular is because it's perfect for what it is, even though it doesn't push the envelope of VR. When you get down to it, even revolutionary breakthroughs in VR won't change games like Beat Saber. Slicing through hundreds of cubes to the rhythm of a killer song is in a way so simple that the developer's artistic vision can be achieved now. It's a retro game fitted to VR and does so brilliantly. It's managing your resources perfectly and creating a game that can be enjoyed by literally anyone. Therein lies the key to the future of VR gaming. The mechanics of play must be intuitive and understood even by novices. For first-person content, someone who has never picked up a game in their life should have almost as good of an understanding on how to interact with the game and use its tools as someone who has been playing games all of their life. It should have key fundamental principles that make functional sense. In an oft-used phrase, it should be more user-friendly. Or to cite the brilliant John Carmack of Doom fame and more, it should be as frictionless as possible. Of course, this doesn't apply to every game, but it is a development of philosophy that should be adopted over time when it applies. The future of gaming in VR is almost limitless. Keep in mind that we are in the very early stages of this newfound technology and that the software we are developing is only a taste of what this industry is capable of. Even disregarding hardware advances, given enough time, VR games will look markedly different. Look no further than in the days of the Nintendo Entertainment System, NES for short, in the 8-bit era of gaming. Developers were forced to port arcade cabinet games to home consoles to match the rapidly growing demand at the time. But when those same developers tried to make a game from scratch specifically designed for home consoles rather than clunky cabinets, it didn't work. Or rather, it didn't work as it should have. They continued to develop games as if those people were constantly pumping quarters into a machine. They often completely ignored what was so appealing about home consoles, and in the end, failed to translate their development philosophies over to a new and growing medium. The same is happening with VR. Games are being made that are simply meant to be a VR form of another game, not utilizing the nearly infinite possibilities presented by this technology. However, just as games were designed to be longer, story-driven, variety-ridden experiences over time, so too will VR become distinct. The difference from an arcade game to a home console game is significant. Both are perfectly acceptable forms of entertainment, but the contrast between the two is enormous. Quicker than we thought possible, the way we communicate, work, learn, interact with others, entertain ourselves will be so radically altered that every aspect of our lives will be impacted. We'll build virtual personas that resemble the best parts of us, create handcrafted avatars unique to our very selves, and enter an interconnected universe ripe with content and tools. Of course, with this new escape, there's potential for disaster. Our falsified identities will become a crutch for our crumbling ambitions. What's real and what's not won't matter, for what feels real is real. Our lives may very well fall into the palm of the corporate overlords that control VR. We are in danger of feeding off of an endless content stream that coddles us into a pay-to-win system designed to both enthrall and entrap our very being. The previous threats of judgment by our peers through social media will feel like child's play when compared to face-to-face interactions with anyone in the entire world who may confront us in different guises and with evil intent. We'll have the extraordinary ability to hold a conference or seminar with millions of people from anywhere around the world at any time. A new virtual society will dictate our very lives. Virtual space, virtual objects, and virtual lives will act as a currency to recreate the capitalistic system that persists in the real world. And of course, the people who control this new reality will control all realities. The same crippling reliance we have with current technology will be increased tenfold, and eventually our lives may depict a strange fusion of George Orwell's 1984 and Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, where we become controlled by our insatiable desire for more entertainment. The question that looms large on the horizon is whether we will become mindless, overstimulated zombies addicted to VR. The late Neil Postman feared that humans with advanced technology may end up amusing ourselves to death. Obviously, this is a worst-case scenario. It is merely a depiction of one, albeit highly unlikely, storyline that could become our lot. Yes, we should be aware of the dangers of virtual reality, but its benefits, I suggest, can far outweigh its negative consequences, particularly if we remain vigilant and careful about its various uses. VR can transcend dystopian nightmare scenarios and provide us with vistas that were unimaginable in the past. VR has the uncanny ability to fit every form of entertainment under its umbrella. That's because VR can simulate reality almost perfectly, and as such can recreate what we experience in the real world. Everything VR has to offer will be interconnected through a hub world that is a new reality in itself, mimicking that of the Oasis in Ready Player One, to a frightening degree. Headsets will become the new iPhones and will grow ever easier to access. It will become more than the standard distraction. It will become an unparalleled escape and a new way to live. While it is possible to exploit this escape by heavily violating privacy rights, jacking up the prices of virtual merchandise, and developing a monopoly on this highly addictive technology, an active community and a healthy competition can act as preventive safeguards so that VR can help augment human flourishing. Even though we'll see clear leaders among software and hardware developers, the hope is that given the nearly limitless landscape, there is enough freedom for a multitude of startups and small companies that can mark out their very own unique VR niche. Unlike other top-down technologies, virtual reality is akin to a technological wild west. New AAA VR titles will be so infinitely different compared to the few we have today, but trying to predict it would be nearly impossible. The weirdness factor will be turned up to 11 in a virtual reality way. Now, virtual reality is a game that provides believable predictions of what human lives will be like with the takeover of VR and AI. The game centers around you, a human, still trying to find purpose in a world riddled throughout with automation. You take a job at Activitude, a service-based company offering human labor to our AI overlords. I won't spoil the main points of the plot, of course, but suffice it to say, it is a powerful game that sees a dystopian outlook on humanity's future. Throughout the game, however, a certain level of charm and humor is always present. The AIs you work for are weird, perverted, psychopathic creatures, and it is replete with a dry wit throughout. What our society considers humorous is quite, shall we say, strange. Look no further than the uber-successful VR chat. The ability to develop an avatar of any nationality, race, and any name is a powerful tool that can easily be exploited to wild extremes. That's why we've seen such bizarre behavior by certain VR players. VR will tantalize our very souls with constant oversaturation of new forms of information. You don't have to go outside, you don't have to make a phone call, you don't even have to know a friend, because in a matter of seconds, you can make hundreds of new ones. Looks and social status won't even matter. All that matters is your avataric persona, which you can instantly change depending on your mood and who you are interacting with. You can be anyone you want to be, and can change that person whenever and wherever you desire. To be sure, it could create a false sense of safety and security within VR. For example, if someone suffered from a tragically scarring accident that heavily altered their physical appearance and they became self-conscious of it, then VR might be the one place where they feel truly safe and comfortable. And in theory, VR would be fantastic for them. They could think of themselves without any concerns. In virtual reality, one can adopt any appearance that suits them. If used excessively, though, it may become a crutch, preventing them from interaction in the real world out of fear. On a subject change, though, two often overlooked key factors to the ongoing evolution of VR is AI and auditory interaction. Artificial intelligence is exactly as the name implies. It's a human-created synthetic intelligence designed to do a wide array of tasks that can be performed more efficiently by computer algorithms which can learn by experience forever. Common examples that we are all familiar with include such audio assistants as Alexa, Siri, and Cortana. The reason why they've become so popular is that they are directly connected to the internet and are constantly updating their informational databanks. Because of this, they are learning new materials 24/7. The main other application that AI is used for is intelligent bots. From the dawn of video games, gamers needed an enemy or character that the player can interact with at all times. Nowadays, bots in video games aren't simply Goombas that constantly scroll left to right, but ever-adapting computer pieces capable of outwitting any player that competes with them. Imagine now that the two most utilized aspects of AI come together to make VR infinitely more surreal. Personal assistants appear right before your eyes, and you can even respond to them simply by using your voice. Their eyes follow you as you gaze about an endless library of content, and when in any game or app, they can be accessed in a second simply by saying their name. Virtual assistants are a tool that will be far more impressive in the actual game though. Envision that you join a game of Jeopardy with your friends. The VR host asks you a question, and a virtual button is present in front of each of you. Your response is through voice, and the game is a perfect recreation of the show, but this time with amazing graphics that were not possible ever before. Besides trivia games, story-driven dialogue choice games could also benefit drastically. Rather than simply selecting a preset response like in Mass Effect, you actually respond to the person in front of you as if they were in real life. However, if you combine this with the quick, continuous responses of an AI enemy, the feeling will be surreal and uncanny. Consider that during a heated match, you can communicate to your enemy, try to reason with it, find its weakness through dialogue, and have a literal conversation with its virtual opponents. One of the best examples I can give is Undertale. In Undertale, you have the unique ability during combat to communicate with the monster you're battling and even show mercy to it. Imagine now that as you reach the final boss in an action-adventure game, gunshots are blazing, you struggle to find cover, you're running low on ammo, and all the while, you throw cunning one-liners back at the villain. In that moment, you'll become the hero. You'll reach a level of immersion that is unprecedented in gaming history. Whether through the emotional connections someone could make with virtual characters in an interactive story-driven game, the pleading to a supervillain intent on your destruction, or simply the help of a virtual companion, one way or another, auditory interaction and AI will permanently change VR in the near future. The potential of VR cannot and will not be overlooked. It will persist, nag at us in the real world until eventually we give in and VR is our new reality, which will be fueled by increasingly synthetic intelligences. It took decades of hard and strenuous labor by thousands to create the pyramids, to create the Great Wall of China, and to create the Taj Mahal. Since it required moving massive bits of atomic materials from one spot to another. But to create simulations of the same in VR on even grander scales only requires the movement of computational bits of data which can be repositioned within seconds. If you master VR, then you can master everything. VR will be our future, no matter what, since it is the ultimate electronic playground.